The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lyons, how's it going?
Dude, it's going pretty good. It's been really nice weather, and then it suddenly wasn't, because that's what spring in the mountains is like. And I had a bunch of time to play games, and then I suddenly didn't, because that's what adult life is like. But like, it's been the normal ups and downs, not the like Homer Simpson, like dizzying highs, terrifying lows, right? Like just the normal ebbs and flows with time for the things that I want to do, which is nice.
Yeah, that's what you want, right? One of the things that happens particularly in the region that I live that blows my mind, because we both grew up in the South, right? Specifically like in the South, right? Where it is hot all year round. That's all it does, right?
Yeah,
it's hot.
Not the global South, not the American South, like objectively when looking at a globe, the South, right? Because like the global South means like Australia and Latin America, right? And then like the American South is like Louisiana and Alabama and Kentucky,
the equatorial
like,
South.
Yeah, it is kind of weird, like how
equator.
many qualifiers you need.
Yeah. We lived at or near the equator, right? So I say that though to say that one of the things that happened today that drives me nuts about the Midwestern weather is that like it will start off at like 20 degrees Celsius and then it'll drop to 15 throughout the day, and I'm like, that's not how the sun's supposed to work. Yeah. It's supposed to heat the ball of dirt circling lifelessly through the empty void of space, not make it get colder as the day goes on. What is going on here? And I still don't prepare well for that, because I'll walk outside and be like, it's a little chilly, but you know what? It'll get warmer, and then it doesn't.
Yeah, no, the checking the weather and seeing that the high is at like 8 or 9 a.m. Yeah. And then it's just consistently downhill from there. And you know, where I am in the mountains, like the weather forecast is not reliable beyond like 12 hours, maybe the next full day, because it's like weird topology. But sometimes you see a forecast where it's like, okay, the high is actually right now at like 11 p.m. the night before, and it's just going to go down overnight, then all throughout the next day, then all the following night, then snow. Yeah. It's just like you're standing outside in shorts and a t-shirt, and you're like, I'm going to have to wear boots in like 36 hours.
You're like standing outside and you're like, it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, pretty much. If you're into what was this? Would you call this like a meteorology podcast now? Is what we're doing?
Darn it, Lyons! I'm a chemist, not a meteorologist. But
no, it's a different thing. It's a different thing.
Oh, right. No, we're not doing that one.
I don't know. If you liked the last few minutes and you want to continue to support the next several minutes, you can like and subscribe. This
is not the strongest place to put this.
It's not. It's fine. It's fine. You can like and subscribe, leave comments, links to everything in the show notes. It's also nogog.show. Apparently some people can't read, so you have to say URLs out loud. Nogog.show, nostalgiagoggles.audio, whichever one of those you like. They both work. You can leave reviews, you can recommend the show. Personal recommendations are still the best, but reviews are appreciated. And if you want to go crazy and just support us financially so we can keep doing this thing, you can go to our Patreon. Also links in the show notes. Patreon.com/Nostalgia Goggles Podcast, I think. Don't check my math on that one. Just use the link in the show notes. But if you support us at a high enough level, you will get not just the after show that everybody gets, but your name shouted out. So I first need to thank our 4-bit portables, Brad, Joshua, Keith, and Martin, our 8-bit classics, Yarno, Jay Brent, John, and Kevin, and our 16-bit hero, Michael.
And for $1,000 for 1 month, we will predict the weather. It won't be accurate, but we'll do it.
I will promise not zero accuracy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like even a blind squirrel finds a nut occasionally.
Yeah, but I mean, they won't be like shenanigans forecast. Like we will attempt real normal Earth forecasts.
Yes, but I would say that if we're going to do this for a cool G, we're not allowed to use weather forecasting like like we're not allowed to use somebody else's forecast and just repipe it.
No,
You know, like
that's
we
not
gotta
us
like look at the
forecasting it,
data.
that's us reading.
Yeah. That we gotta like look at any sort of like meteorological data
Yeah.
and like formulate our own forecast.
Yeah, I believe it's pronounced meteorological.
Okay. Yeah, but like metrology is different than meteorology.
No, they're the same. If they have similar letters and a similar cadence, they're the same word. Did you not take English classes as a student?
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's because science classes.
Yeah. I was going to say my wife's an English major, though. I can check with her.
Yeah. Just take my word for it. It's fine. We have a
like those words are the same. That doesn't sound right.
But if you say anything with enough confidence, some people will believe you. We have a fun mailbag question. This is actually kind of related to a question we answered recently on an episode. And I didn't put the full question in the show notes, which when we were getting ready to record, you were like, I don't understand this. And I was like, no, we'll get to it.
Because it's not a question. It's just a statement, shoulder buttons and controller grip. I'm like, there's no question there. It's just, yes, those are things.
Yeah. So before I get to the question from a listener, I need to share with you a story.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I just sort of assumed people all held controllers the way I held controllers because that seemed like the obvious right way, right? Not even just the right way, but like the only way. And then you would do stupid things sometimes, like classic Mega Man games. You could like hold a button down on the second player controller and then like you wouldn't die when you fell into pits. And you did that by like holding it down with your foot, or you stick it into like a drawer in your dresser or something dumb. But that's like
claw.
That's rubber bands, right? Whatever. Those are edge cases. So there's the right way, and then there's everything else anybody else does is wrong. And then
there's the right way, and then there's the max power way, which is the wrong way, but faster.
Way faster. So then I learned about things like the claw grip, right? Where you reach down from the top of a Super Nintendo controller like an animal, and you press face buttons with the side of your index finger like a crazy person. Yeah.
Yep.
And for a long time, I'm a little embarrassed to admit that my mental model was, well, those people are doing it wrong. They're just doing it wrong on purpose for what they think is a good reason, which is
just wrong enough to work.
Exactly, right? But that's such a condescending like way to validate yourself. Like, well, they know that they're wrong, though.
It's such a bizarre place to hill to die on for tribalism, you know, like
totally. Yes.
You're like, I am part of this tribe of controller holders, and I swear to God, everyone else is wrong.
Yes. And then the N64 controller was released, and it was like, well, there's no right way to hold this. Like, this is obviously the ramblings of a madman. This is, and yes, they think there is a right way, but then there's all the meme ways and everything. But then we entered the world of dual shoulder buttons, right? So now you have 4 buttons on top of the controller, the D-pad, 4 face buttons, and then 2 analog sticks, right? So unless you are some kind of weird, like squid-fingered person, there's too much crap on there for you to interact with all of it meaningfully all at the same time, right? So it's usually combinations of things. And again, I was older by this point, but I subconsciously fell into there's the correct way to hold this controller, and then there's everyone else who's wrong. And the correct way to hold a controller that has 4 shoulder buttons is 3 fingers around the grips and your index fingers on top. But, Lyons, there are 4 buttons up there. How do you switch between them quickly? To which my response is, I move my finger the 3 millimeters from one set of shoulder buttons to the other set of shoulder buttons. And then that just became a deeply entrenched thing, right? And then like in my early 30s, way later, I found out some people put their middle fingers on top so that they have one finger on each button on the top, and then they do the D-pad and thumbstick with one thumb and the other thumbstick and the 4 face buttons with their other thumb. And I don't understand this. I now know someone very well who went through the muscular retraining to adopt this controller style, and they swear by it. And every time I see them do it, I'm like, you look like an actor in a TV show holding a controller who's never actually played a video game before. Like, my brain just cannot accept that. So I know logically that obviously you can, but have you ever played a game where you had your middle and index fingers on top of the controller? Would you ever do that?
No, that's the wrong way to do it.
It's the wrong way to do it.
No. First of all, I'm not here to yuck somebody's yum. Hold the controller however you like. But I will say that feels to me, because like the idea is it's just like, oh, well, you can switch between them. Like you could press them way faster. But I can't think of a game where you would need to press them at the same time, Like, so mostly you're pressing one or the other, and it's like, but now you don't have to move as quickly. And I'm like, yeah. And you know what? I can technically hit the brake faster if I put my left foot on the brake, my right foot on the gas. But you're not supposed to do that for reasons, right? And so, like, to me, I'm like, yeah, no, you don't drive that way, so why would you hold the controller that way? And I know what they're going to say, which is they're going to say it's not like doing that. It's like putting your right foot on the gas and your left foot on the clutch. And I'm going to say, but you're not driving a manual controller, it's an automatic. And now we're not even talking about controllers anymore. But that's the straw man argument I just had with my made-up interlocutor that I could easily defeat.
I like the, I've been taking piano lessons for a little while, and the description every piano teacher uses for the pedals on a piano is it's like a clutch. And if you don't know how to drive a manual transmission, I guess you never learned how to use the pedals on a piano. Like that seems to be the only metaphor that anyone has. But can you imagine?
I'm just picturing somebody trying to learn it the other way, right? Where they're like,
yeah, it's kind of like
how do I drive this?
The end of a crescendo.
Yeah, how do I drive this manual transmission? It's like, well, it's just like the pedals on a piano. Well, I know how to play a piano. Immediate car accident.
That's true. I did crash my piano into the drive-thru at a Wendy's. So I'm thinking now with this manual transmission metaphor, could you imagine now that controllers like the PS5 controller has like resistive, capacitive, or haptic, resistive haptic triggers, but not the buttons, the R1 and L1 versus the R2 and L2. In a driving game, you could literally do that. You could say like slowly release the trigger while you press down on the other trigger. So one is like the gas and one is like the clutch. And I hate the very idea of that.
Well, because all in good fun, anyone in their right mind would make the L1 the clutch and the R1 the gas.
Yes.
Because, or R2,
L2
L2 and R2
yeah.
would be the clutch and gas respectively, right? Because the clutch is on the left-hand side and the gas is on the right-hand side. And and you know what? In this analogy, the big honking button in the center can be the brake,
It's got to be the horn, right?
Yeah, you're right. That's totally the horn. And for $1,000, we'll make one that has an airbag in it. What do we? Yes, that is
single figure.
Yeah,
this doesn't even touch on the Steam Deck and like some Pro controllers that actually have grip buttons.
Oh yeah,
for your ring and pinky fingers, which I don't.
Yeah, no. Eventually, we're all just going to be like the navigators in Dune, just encased in spice, where like every articulation of our joints is a button, And that's where we're going, but we're still in a place where we don't need to be drugged out of our minds in order to play video games.
More buttons. How do I make a better video game? More buttons, obviously.
Obviously. Actually, tangentially related, I was talking to my supervisor, and I'm floored that he either had not put this together himself or never heard it before. Is that we were talking about, because I work in an analytical lab, and we ran into a thing where it was causing a work stoppage and we worked around it, right? And he was like, well, that's not ideal. I'm like, I know, but it gets us samples out now and then they can fix it long-term later. And he was like, yeah, but he was still hemming and hawing. And I was just like, look, the spice must flow. We have to get samples have got to go out. Data's got to go out. The spice must flow. He was like, that's awesome. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're absolutely Arrakis, we're the Harkonnens on Dune, and we got to get spice out the door by any means necessary. We're not the heroes. We're just businessmen.
that also raises some serious questions about what your analytical chemistry lab produces, but let's not.
No, let's not do that. Instead, what we should wonder about is what are you playing and why should I care?
So I finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which ended up, I think my playthrough was like 82 hours. And I wouldn't say I 100%ed it, but I'm like in the 90s, probably even like above 95. There's some side quests and shenanigans I didn't do that would have taken probably a couple more hours and stuff, depending on how well I did at those mini games. But like I really squeezed the juice out of that game. I enjoyed it a lot. It's long and there's just so much shenanigans and stuff. And most of it I was totally there for. So like in general, I think I probably even preferred it to Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is, part one of the remake trilogy, because why not make this more confusing? I wanted something a little like chill to play. And so I was like, oh, you know what? We got this like mini review thing we're going to do that we'll talk about later. And I'm going to do Harvest Moon on the Game Boy Color, because I've had that game laying around and I've always wanted to play it and see how it's different than the Super Nintendo game that I have such fond memories of. And I bounced off of it like right away because of one tiny thing. And this is going to make me sound like such a diva, but in the Super Nintendo Harvest Moon, time stops at midnight. And you don't have unlimited energy, but there's certain things you can do that don't require energy, like pulling weeds. So you can clear your entire farm of weeds in the first night because you just do that, right? Weeds and small rocks, because you pick up small rocks and you throw them in the lake. You don't have to use energy to smash them. And then the weeds you just pick up and throw, and they like shatter when you throw them. And then you save your energy for like chopping wood and smashing the big rocks, right? But it's just one of those things that's like deep in my mind about like, this is how Harvest Moon plays. And in the Game Boy Color one, for whatever reason, they decided time doesn't stop. You can actually stay up all night. And then it smashes at like 6 a.m. And he goes, oh man, it's 6 a.m. I should go eat breakfast and get my day started. And that was actually the thing that broke me. Not that it turns out that time doesn't stop, but because it's a Game Boy Color game, there is not a clear enough visual indication that time is passing, and there isn't enough screen real estate to have a clock on screen. So it just surprised me that I had stayed up all night, right? Which is like, what did I do, a bunch of meth and then start weeding my garden? Like, how did I not know that the whole night passed? Right? So there was just, because I've played a lot of different farming sim games. Well, I've played a handful of different games that I put a tremendous amount of time into, and I realized like this for me will be a deal breaker. Like I cannot be stopping to check my watch every 5 minutes of like Earth time to know what time it is in game, because I will find that very frustrating. And so there were some interesting things, like the town is stripped way down and there aren't any of the relationship mechanics. And the way like you interact with the farm is a little bit different because you only have 2 buttons instead of the 4 buttons plus shoulder buttons. So I was like, oh, there's some interesting things here. And I'm never going to see any of them because I can't deal with not knowing what time it is. Like I would rather they took up an entire row at the top of the screen that had a permanent clock and I lost all that screen real estate than have to stop, press select, look at the time. And then it's like 2 or 3 screens of text because Game Boy can't fit a ton of text, right? So it's like, then you have to like A to get through it all. And I was just like, nope, can't do it. So I literally only got like 15 or 20 minutes into it. And I was just like, this is, at least now I know, but I'm kind of sad.
Well, I've also been there though, because and this is indicative of, like the overwhelming wealth of video games that we have, right? Because like there have definitely been some things where I'm like, I like 95% of it, but there's this one thing I don't like. And I'm now going to move on to something that has 99% things that I like. And it does make you feel like a Roman emperor, like eating grapes on your, like chaise lounge and being like, I do not believe this game has pleased me. Off with its head. I shall move on to the next. Like, it makes you feel crappy, but, at the same point in time, you're like, if this game were a person, and I was like, I like 95% of hanging out with you, but you do one thing that I find irritating, so now I am done with this relationship, that makes you a terrible person. But with a video game, it's there to make you happy, so...
Yeah. Well, and the money's transacted. The studio that made it probably doesn't even exist anymore because it's a game from 30 years ago. So it's like no one is paying for this. Like no one is suffering for my flippancy, so it's fine.
Yep.
The other two things that I'll mention. You recommended 2 games episodes ago.
Cool.
Yeah. One of them
sounds like a thing I do.
One of them, it was a thing you did. One of them was the storybook game.
Oh yeah. Did you like that?
I did, and then I realized, like, I went on a little trip with my family. I think like the week after you recommended it, and I was like, this is a perfect time. I'm gonna buy that game. I'm gonna put it on my Steam Deck, and I played it the whole time we were on vacation. It was like 2 or 3 days we were out of town, and then when we were coming back, Sue said something in the car that just made me think about the game, and I just knew deep in my heart, I was like, never gonna touch that game again. It was like a summer romance. It's like, yep. I met that game on vacation. We had a nice time together, and now that game is gone forever. I can't even remember what it was called.
I had almost Rogue Book, and I have almost the exact same experience where like I enjoyed it like crazy while I was playing it. And I beat it, and I was like, I enjoyed this so much. I'd like to, get more mechanics out of it. And then I just stopped, and I'm okay with that. Like it, because I think that a lot of the times is we tend to judge games by how many hours we put into it, but I think it should be judged by joy per unit hour, right? Because it's like I only put maybe 10 hours into that game, but it was joyful the entire time. Then I stopped, and I'm okay with that. But yes, I had a similar thing, but I am glad that you enjoyed it for the time that you played it.
Yeah, I mean, it did all of the things you said to the exact quality you described, right? Like, hey, this has really good music. Hey, this has kind of a fun art style. Hey, this has sort of an interesting premise for like how you're in this like roguelite mechanics loop, right? And I was like, yeah, this is fun. And it has like the battle system is similar in some of the mechanics and very much in the visual presentation to Darkest Dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just like, oh, I wonder if some of the assumptions from like the order people are in apply here, and they do. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Like so games can start to reuse some of this visual language to indicate like if you're in the back on the left, you probably can't hit the guy in the back on the right unless you have a ranged weapon or can cast spells or something. And so it's just like, right. So this visual presentation like isn't just stolen from another game. Like it has meanings mechanically that are sort of implied from like the physical realities of it. And so I was like, okay, I've played a ton of games with this, so it's nice to see some consistency there. But yeah, I just like no notes, like solid B.
Yep. Solid B. Great. Fun game. Give it a try. It's not going to consume your life. It's not Civilization 6, but yeah. Well, good. Did you try any others, or was that the main one?
There was another one, and it must have been left an impression on me because I can't remember which one it was. But while I try to figure that out, I'm going to look at my Steam library. While I try to figure that out, what are you playing?
So I actually have played a slew of new games. One of the games that it went on sale. And so I really like the PlayStation thing where I say like, hey, this is on my wish list. So it goes, hey, this is on sale for like 80% off. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's a game called Gourd. And the thing that sold me on it was that somebody said like, hey, man, if you like Darkest Dungeon, you will like this game. And I was like, man, I really liked Darkest Dungeon. So, and so, like you start off playing and it's got some complex mechanics. And it's not, like a 4-person side scroller kind of a thing. It's full 3D, right? But it has the same kind of feel of like, oh, there's like dark, creepy people and like a bad person is kind of in charge, and I'm like, all right, yeah. And, we're going through the dark and we're fighting some bad guys and I took some damage and they're like, now you need to build your town. Here's a bunch of town mechanics. And I was like, this is pretty fun. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is like a 7. Anyways, I'm playing Darkest Dungeon again. That's the way I was going to... because the game's great, but it's not Darkest Dungeon, right? And the whole time I was playing it, I was like, this game's pretty good. I would rather be playing Darkest Dungeon. So I have started another run on Darkest Dungeon.
I feel bad for those people, man. They're like, we're going to make a game that's even better than X. And then people play it and they go, nope. And then it actually drives them back into the arms of the game they were trying to be better than.
Yeah, you're like, and it's good. It's a good game. It's not better than X. So I have started a new run on that, but I did try a couple of other games, so that way I could talk about something other than Darkest Dungeon on this podcast. Three of them. Specifically, I've been playing, or I played a little bit. I bounced off of all of these games, it's worth saying, and went back to Darkest Dungeon, which called to me into the abyss. Immortals of Aveum, I don't know. They probably pronounced it at some point. I did not get far enough in it to hear them pronounce it.
I didn't get far enough into the game to hear anyone like look into the camera and say the title of the movie.
Hey, they did the thing. But I bounced off of it very quickly, and I could actually articulate. And I was like, this is good because I could articulate what the game did to where I was like, nah, I'm done. Which is that, as I've said before, a poor tutorial will completely turn me off to a game, right? Because I'm like, look, man, let me, like with that Rats of Knights of whatever game where like you got to play as like a rat trying to save a kingdom. And like after 30 minutes of tutorial, I was like, let me play this game. I want to play this game. Stop telling me all of the cool. Yeah, you're like, the game is the tutorial. Like, you're not Portal, do better. Is that one is if you are creating a first-person shooter, I believe that you can go into it as a developer if you've marketed it as a first-person shooter, assuming that the person, if you're not flouting any of the traditions of first-person shooters, assuming that the person knows how to play first-person shooters, to the point where you don't need to belabor how any of that works, you know? So, like, you know, moving with the L stick and then, you know, like looking around with the R stick, right? Dude, give me like 10 seconds of, hey, do this thing, and then let me move on. What I hate is, and what this game did is, you know, you start off with like first they start with a lore dump, and I always hate that because like, don't give me a lore dump. I don't have context for any of this. Why do I care? Who's the big bad? You know, like, don't say like, there was this big bad knight who did big bad things. No, let me get to be in the universe for a little bit, and then let me see the big bad knight do big bad things. And I'm like, oh no, a big bad knight who's doing big bad things. So it starts off with like a huge lore dump, and then basically you've got your partner, who they want you to care about, and they're running around the city. And the goal is that, and so they're like, oh, we'll run here and jump here and follow this person around. And they're trying to make sure that you know how to move, right? That's what they're doing. But I'm like, I'm tired of looking at this person's butt as I'm running around this city meaninglessly, and they're yelling stuff at me, right? You know? And then they're like, oh, look, there's some growth on this building. Use your powers to shoot it. I'm like, I know how to shoot in a first-person shooter. Don't make me shoot these random things. Just let me move on with life, right? So after all of that, once I got past all of that, and then it went to another cutscene with another lore dump, I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. And I was like, what's I judging this game unfairly? And the answer is no, I'm perfect.
Glad we're able to resolve that so easily.
Yep. But what I thought about it is I was like, can I think of a game that had to do something similar and was successful? And I was like, I can. And it's Borderlands 2, you know? And I think that the big key difference between Borderlands 2 is it also does a huge lore dump in the beginning, right? But it does it over your HUD, you know? So, like, you're not just following a person mindlessly. You are getting from point A to point B, and there's real stuff in the way that can kill you. You know, like, you are playing the game, right? And so by the time you get from point A to point B, you know what the game developers can assume that you have the skills to move through the world, right? You've shot stuff, you've won, and all this other sort of stuff. You fought a boss, right? So they know you can't get by without having all these skills. So you feel like you're actually playing the game while they're gating you to make sure that you do know how to play the game and doing a lore dump at the same time. You know, so by the time you're done, you know who Claptrap is, you know who Handsome Jack is, you know who your allies are, you know all this stuff, right? You know, so I was like, yeah, that's fun. Following somebody around while they're like, oh yeah, well, you know, the 34th Regiment just, you know, suffered heavy casualties, and I'm like, God, I don't care. This is
you're kind of describing like why a tailing mission is terrible.
Yes.
right? Because the
Yeah.
computer is like setting the pace by saying this NPC is going to move at this pace, and you have to just follow them either without getting caught or while they talk to you or follow their directions. Otherwise, they will just stand there until you follow their orders. Like, and that's generally not very fun, and it's certainly not fun for very long.
Right. When I think that, because I think that in video games, a lot of times it's like, well, don't tell the player stuff, like show them stuff, like show don't tell. But I think that a lot of times that they say like, well, as long as the player's doing something, then they're playing the video game, and it's like, no, the player has to be doing something fun or something that is part of your game. If the core mechanic of the game is following people around, then I'm out. And that's all you've told me about this game so far, is that the game is about following somebody around and occasionally shooting little bolts of magic out of my hand. Woo, I don't care. But bounced off of that one. Bounced off of Gotham Knights. Have you heard anything about this one?
Is that one of the newer ones or one of the older ones?
One of the newer ones.
Then no.
So it's a really cool concept, and I'm really bummed that it was executed on so poorly, in my opinion. Is that you don't play as Batman. You play as either Nightwing or Batgirl or Red Hood or Robin. So
the
like
Gotham Knights.
The Gotham Knights,
I
right?
assume.
Because Batman's dead. So
Dead man.
yeah. So that's a really cool concept, and the combat is so boring.
Oh,
And it's so repetitive. And so the two things is, one is they commit one of the cardinal sins of gaming, which is giving you access to menus that you can't impact. So like, by the time you're playing the game in earnest, there are 10 menus, let's say, right? They give you access to all 10 at the beginning of the game, even though there's nothing you can do with 8 of them. So it's like, this is overwhelming, and because they're like, oh, well, eventually you can do thing A. I'm like, then eventually tell me about it. Don't tell me about it now. I don't need this information, right? It's overwhelming and confusing. Also, you got to save the player from themselves, right? Because the thing is that each night, right, you can go out and stop crimes. And there are like main story crimes, and then there's like side crimes, And the side crimes are really boring and repetitive, right? But I think that they're there in case you just want to like slap some people around, which I get that, right? Like, but the thing is that they're like, well, your goal is as a Gotham Knight is to reduce the amount of chaos in the city or whatever, like reduce crime, right? So I'm like, okay, so there is no in-game downside to me going and completing every little side mission every single night, which is not the optimal way to play the game. It is not fun. It's checking, because the act of stopping those minor crimes is trivial. So it's not, I'm Batgirl running around walloping crime and saving Gotham. It's checking things off of a list of stuff to do.
Yeah, it's grocery shopping.
Like, it's grocery shopping. Absolutely. Right. And I'm like, this is not fun because, and the thing is that like, I literally at one point I was like, I shouldn't play the game this way. I should just do some story quests when I don't want to do side quests. And I just physically could not make myself do that, because I was like, no, because what if I'm under leveled later? Or what if other crime happens? Or what if all of the, I was like, no. What I said is like, what they should do is, because you're doing this at night, is just say like, hey, you only have so much time at night to do stuff, but until it's daytime, and you don't get to cavort around during the daytime. So like, pick what you have time to do wisely, or something like that, or make each mission eat up a certain amount of, or something. Create some type of an in-game mechanic to where it is not optimal for me to check every single item off the list. And then I might play the game more fun. But that falls into the, you gotta save the players from themselves. And they absolutely did not do that for me. And they let me run straight off that cliff.
So I had to look up this game real quick because I was like, did I hear about this one? I don't think I did. And I'm still pretty sure that I didn't. But on the official GothamKnightsGame.com website, they have Meet the Knights, and it's the 4 characters, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's each character and their color and their symbol and their name. And so there's Batgirl, whose name is Batgirl. So her symbol is like a bat, like Batman's, right? And there's Nightwing, whose name is Nightwing. And so his symbol is, I don't know if there's a bird called a Nightwing, but it's like a bird of prey, like a raptor, right. Mm-hmm. And so it's like a big bird symbol that's kind of reminiscent of the bat symbol, because obviously, right? And then there's Robin, whose name is Robin, and his symbol is an R, which feels like they maybe should modernize that at some point, because it's like kind of lazy. But then Red Hood, a character I'm not familiar with, who wears a red mask, which is not a hood, his symbol is a bat. I'm not. You may know the explanation of that. You don't have to explain it, but just looking at this, it's like, okay, Batgirl, I get. Nightwing, I get. Robin, lazy, but I can at least understand. Red Hood, who are you? What are you doing here?
So Red Hood is actually Jason Todd.
I thought Nightwing was Jason Todd.
No, Nightwing's Dick Grayson.
Wait, so there's 3 generations of Robins?
Yeah. Batman's got a problem. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Is that why he's not in this? Is it because he's in prison?
For child endangerment? So it's Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and I forget the name of new Robin.
Wasn't Dick Grayson famously beat to death with a crowbar?
Jason Todd was famously beat to death by a crowbar. By a Joker.
There's so much.
Yes. There's a lot of lore, man. Batman's been around for a while.
There's a lot.
No, it was Jason Todd was beaten to death in, I think, The Killing Joke.
Yes, The Killing Joke.
And he was brought back through a Lazarus pit and was a villain for a little bit, trying to kill Batman, and then eventually he becomes a good guy again.
Right, magic. Last complaint, and then we can get back to the actual point of this podcast. So there's like this artistic rendering of the 4 of them just casually walking down the middle of a street with their weapons drawn, and Batgirl, who famously wears purple and yellow and is a redhead, in this scene is lit by neon lights coming seemingly from nowhere, and it makes her hair look red, and it makes it look like her costume is purple. But then her little Meet the Knights card shows that her hair is in fact like kind of like an auburn, like a reddish brown, and she is wearing blue. And like I know that like the characters grow and evolve, and there's multiple universes and stuff, and so like all that crap. But there are certain things that it's just like you can't make the Joker's hair not green. And they probably have done that at one point or another, but like the Joker has green hair. You could probably walk up to like most 10-year-olds and just be like, hey, you know the Joker from Batman? What color is his hair? And they would be like, green, right? Because it's just like a thing. And like her costume, there's already another guy with blue. Like, let her have purple. Purple's her color. Okay, anyway.
Cool thing I think about the Red Hood is that he like, you know, you got like Nightwing who uses his Eskrima sticks, right? You have Robin, who is like an expert in like a bow staff, right? You have Batgirl, who tends to gravitate towards tonfas, and you have Red Hood, who uses a gun.
Yeah. I mean, you can see thematically, right? Because you have a staff. So when you're Robin and you're a kid, this is just what this episode's about now. When you're a kid, you're small, and so you need the staff because it covers a lot of ground and it's very versatile. But then as a man, you know, then he evolves into the sticks because they're less defensive, but they give you more offensive capabilities, and they're a lot more flexible because they're split, right? The tonfas are a more complicated finesse weapon, and there's like a stereotype of, you know, women gravitating towards finesse weapons versus like bludgeoning weapons. And so she's got, you know, it plays into that stereotype a little bit, which may or may not be a good thing. And then bullets are like very small staves that you hurl at your enemies really fast.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. No, and the thing too is that like I just like the idea though, where it's just kind of like, yeah, you know, we're the Bat family. We only use non-violent. We only use like non-lethal takedowns. It's like, I'll shoot a bitch. Like, I don't care. You know?
Yeah.
Like I will ice the penguin right now. Like,
is it? Oh God, is it Kingdom Come? No, it can't be because it's the Punisher.
It's the one where Thomas Wayne becomes Batman. I forget the name of that one.
No, what I mean, yes, that is Thomas Wayne as Batman using a shotgun, which is so awesome. But no, what I'm thinking of is it might be from Civil War when like there are a bunch of people are arguing about like what to do with the villain, and then the Punisher just friggin' executes him.
Yes, who was it that it was a villain that they had broken out of prison, and it was like not the Iron Man side, it was the other side, you know, and they were like, oh man, well what do we do? It's like, oh well, maybe we could do thing A. Maybe we could. It just blows them apart, and they all look at the Punisher like horrified. He's like, "What?"
You know? He's villain. I'm the Punisher.
This was entirely in character. I don't know what you were expecting.
So good.
But anyways, yes, Batman. The other game that I played is Skull, the Hero Slayer.
This one I have heard of. Yeah,
kind of a cool game. It was one of the freebies from the PlayStation Network, so I downloaded it. I played it. It's interesting conceptually because the heroes have come and devastated the monsters, and you are now fighting back, right? And it has I was really excited to play it because I was like, oh, you know what this feels like? This feels like Kid Chameleon. Like, you know, but maybe good, right? You know, because like you get different like skull masks, right? Like you put on different skulls and that gives you different powers and different abilities, right? And I was like, oh, like Kid Chameleon. And since it's a roguelike, it wouldn't have the same branching tree structure, but it would have the like each run could be a little bit different. And you know, you pick which doors you go through. I'm like, oh man, this would be really cool because I'd love to go up to Lyons and be like, no, not Kid Chameleon. You play this game and unruin that part of your childhood that got ruined, right? And unfortunately, I could not do that. But it may still be worth a play. You tend to have a slightly higher tolerance for video games than I do. I say that though to say that the thing that it also made me realize, because I was like, well, this still wasn't a loss because it made me realize something about a game, which is that pacing in a video game is obviously very important. Combat pacing is also super important. And so I now firmly believe that if you are playing a video game that is supposed to be relatively fast paced, which this game ostensibly is, most bad guys, most like normal bad guys, not heavies or mini bosses or anything like that, need to be able to be dispatched with one combo, right? So if your combo is square, 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 that needs to dispatch most of the one-off enemies, right? And then like the heavies maybe take 2 rounds of your square, 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 right? And then, you know, obviously you have mini bosses and bosses that are their own thing, right? I say that to say that in this game, the normal guys took between 2 to 3 rounds of you square, square, squaring. And that is tedious.
But now the critical question is it enemy dense? Because if there's one enemy per screen and you have to like square, 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 and then duck and avoid a projectile and then square, 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 that is a different kind of pacing than it's like you have to do 3 combos and there's 20 enemies on every screen.
It is very enemy dense. The nice thing is that enemies cluster, so like you can attack multiple enemies at the same time, and the enemies can share a space. So like you can group them all up so there's 10 enemies basically all in the same space and hit them all at the same time, which I think is part of the core engagement. But
I am watching a preview video on Steam, and literally as you were saying that, it was showing the player intentionally kiting the enemies together to then like hit them all at once.
Yeah.
That, you could not have synced that up better on purpose.
So I do definitely think that is what they're going for. But at the same point in time, like if I do something really super clever and do something like that, I don't want to sit there because when you're hitting them, they're interrupted, you know, so they don't hit you. So literally once you start getting them into that rhythm, it's just square, 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 done. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to keep wailing on enemies. This isn't fun. It's monotonous. And I think that the reason why they do that is because the roguelite portion of it, you can increase the damage that you do and stuff like that. So I think eventually you can get to the point where it doesn't take 2 or 3 rounds of you hitting your combo, but that runs into another interesting math problem, which is that, you know, I went through like 4 rounds of it. And each time I put it into damage because I'm like, I need to be dealing more damage because I'm tired of dealing with this. And so the first time I was like, yeah, man, you're going to deal 6% more damage. Neat. 12% more damage. Awesome. 18% more damage. Love it. But that did not change the quanta of times I had to hit them, you know, because of and it's a problem in all games where it's just like, if you deal 1 additional damage every level, you know, and bad guys have 5 hit points, right? Then, you know, you feel it, you know, for you don't really feel it until like, you know, a later level, right? Because like first time you have to hit them, you know, 5 times, and then, you know, you have to hit them 4 times, but then like eventually it's like you crest, right? You know, you get it. So anyways.
Yeah,
so
there's I think, is that a step function where like there's like jumps in power where it's like, oh, you feel these tiny gains and there's a huge gain, and then tiny or no gains, and then a huge gain, and like that, if that power curve is off, it can kind of, to your probably broader thesis, like ruin the experience.
Yeah, because basically is that there's this point where it's like, even though you got, you know, 1 more unit power, it doesn't impact the game in any way because you're still hitting them 3 times, right? You know, so like if, you know, if each time you deal 5 damage, if they've got 16 hit points, right? You know, it's like I got to hit them 3 times, right? If I, you know, if I do 4 damage each time, I still have to hit them, you know, like the 4th time, like you know, that's what kills them, right? So when you suddenly go from that quanta of having to hit them 4 times versus 3 times, that is when you feel it. And so I say all that to say that I powered up that ability 4 times and never felt it because the quanta was never high enough to make a difference. So I was like, okay, well, I've just done 4 runs and I'm not feeling any of the roguelite portions of this game. So
which is especially weird because my quick mental model math on this, and maybe I'm thinking of it wrong, but is like, oh, then you would feel that on a boss, right? Because a boss has 100 hit points instead of 10 hit points. And so in aggregate, those little add-ups in damage would make you be able to kill the boss faster. But I don't think that's the right balance, right? I would almost expect the opposite. Like, I should be able to now grind through the rank and file foot soldiers super fast, and then maybe the boss doesn't feel that much easier. But the point is, the rank and file foot soldiers were not a challenge, and so I am more prepared. I still have full health, or I have my health potions, or I still have a full mana bar or whatever. Like, I arrived with resources I didn't have because the jackasses were easier, right? Whereas saying the jackasses were the same level of challenge, but the difference is now instead of the boss taking 5 minutes, I can beat it in 4, is like, but that still means I need to survive for 4 entire minutes. Whereas like, I don't have a different resource pool. So like that feels like that's probably not the balance I would go to, at least as a first pass personally.
Well, and also too, like some of the mini bosses, which are heroes, right? You know, a great example is
some of the mini heroes.
Yeah, some of the mini heroes, some of the first levels, you know, they take what feels like an ungodly number of hits to kill. Especially there's one that's in particular that's like a tank, and I don't know. Let's say that they take 100 hits to kill, right? That's too. It's way too many hits, right? Because then you don't feel like that you're, you know, fighting an epic battle and you're ducking and weaving and getting in a jab where you can, right? What you feel like, and this is that you're walking up to them and you're wailing on them, and then they do a thing that requires you to dodge, you know? Right. So it's like, all right, I'm going to walk up to you in square. Okay, now you're telegraphing. I need to reflexively see the telegraph, press right circle, you know, right analog stick circle. Okay, now wail. And I'm like, it's not engaging, and it's the core engagement of the game, right? You know, so I'm like, this is disappointing. And again, it could have just been done by like, just, you know, make it so that way the rank and file get dispatched way faster, right? And that, and maybe they did it that way because there's just not that much game. I don't know. You know, but like make it so that way the rank and file can they get dispatched way faster, and then just speed up the bosses so that way they have fewer hit points, but they do more damage and they attack faster, right? And this is the last thing I'll say to this, but like, this is one of the things I've said to a number of different players and come to recently in D&D, which is I refuse to let players in D&D min-max for armor class, right? I just won't let them do it.
Okay.
And there's a reason why. Is that so at one point somebody was like, oh, I want to get a +2 like armor, right? You know? And I was like, instead, I will give you a belt of giant strength that will give you a +2 to your strength modifier. So you will get +2 to hit and +2 to damage. So you don't do this armor class thing. And they were like, that's crazy, you know, like it's way more powerful. I'm like, it is.
Wait, I want to guess because
Yeah.
you know the interworking mechanical stuff of D&D better than I do, but is it because them doing more damage makes combat end faster, whereas them getting hit less drags combat out, where they're not hitting but they're also not getting hit?
Yep. It is
Hey.
exactly that. Yeah. No, it's exactly that, because I'm like, I would much rather we both come to the table, hit each other as hard as we freaking can, and then combat ends one way or another, than to be on round 5 of like, okay, well, I have a 25% chance of hitting you, and you have a 25% chance of hitting me. So we're just going to sit here and miss each other for 5 rounds until one of us eventually gets a lucky shot. It's like, that's not fun or engaging. So like,
you know what that is though? That's a good movie. Like watching, Jet Li and someone from his stunt team like throw these wild punches and kicks and come within millimeters of each other's faces and like super tight shots, and it's just one long sequence, and you're like because if any one of those blows was landed, like the fight would be over. Like that's cool, right? And if you're the person doing that, that feels very cool. If you are imagining that with dice, not cool.
No, especially agreed. And also, too, I would even say, though, that I'm okay with, because if somebody's like, I have a very high armor class, but like 5 hit points, right? I'd be like,
yeah,
okay, like let's do that. So yes, it is very rare that it is rare that I hit you, but if I hit you, I'm going to knock you out. Like I'm fine with that, because then that also would end combat relatively quickly. But yeah, the people who are like, yeah, I've got 500 hit points and an armor class of 25, I'm like, congratulations, I can't hit you. So let's all like, and I actually and now I'm on a bit of a D&D change, but like I more so have like started with my players just letting them peer behind the curtain and being like, what are you trying to do, man? Like are you trying to break the game? Because like literally at one point, I will let players, if they don't like their character, I'll let them make a new one, because we're all here to just have fun, right? So at one point in this campaign that's all about doing faffy nonsense, right? All of the original party had like dipped out, right, for new characters, and I'm like, yeah, man, whatever, because the reason why they're doing stuff is an affectation, anyways, right? And so then one of the players was like, so why are we still trying to get this rune stone? And I was like, oh, well, it's the rune stone of great power. And he's like, yeah, but like that was this character's thing, and he's not here anymore. So like, why do we need to go do this? And I was like, well, what are you driving at here? And they were like, well, I mean, none of our characters are motivated. I'm like, are you doing a motivation check? Because that's fine. If you're trying to say like, hey, group, let's figure out why we're trying to do this. But he was like actually making the pitch of like, we should not continue to pursue this course of action. I'm like, so, I mean, look, man, if you just want to retire and they all retire and then this whole campaign ends, like, I'm fine with that. That's what's going to happen, though.
I'll describe the end of Lord of the Rings, where Samwise walks up to his hobbit wife and kisses her, and it's a sunny day, and then he takes the baby from her, and then credits. Like, if that's what you want, we can do that.
We can do that. I'm like, but, and especially because I'm like, I got like 2 adventures in the hopper. I'll just repurpose those for later, and then, that's the end of everyone's story. We can end it right now, but that's what's going to happen. So when somebody's like, oh, man, I made it so that way I've got like this amazingly high armor class, I'm like, cool, I can't hit you. So great, good job, you broke the game, please stop. And one of the other ones that happened at one point where somebody was like, yeah, I can deal like 50 damage in a round, and everybody else is dealing like 20 damage. I'm like, cool, I'm just ignoring half of your damage, man. Everyone is resistant to your damage. They're like, that's not fair. And I'm like, it brings you in line with everyone else. You are about as balanced as everyone else now, And they're like, but I like doing tons of damage. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Then I gotta nuke up everyone else, and then you're gonna be in the same problem, right? And then the problem too is then like when you got people who are like, I've made it so I can deal so much damage. Like I'm a level 5 and dealing like 80 damage around. I'm like, great job. What that means is I now need to throw things at you that have like 200 hit points in order to withstand you. The problem is that you don't, which is like the number of hit points that you would need for like a 10th level encounter. The problem is that you don't have a 10th level number of hit points. So it's going to hit you and knock you the hell out. So like, stop trying to break the game. And let's all move on with life. So anyways, I say all that to say that, yes, to your point, right, is that high armor class is no fun because we just swing and miss all the time. Having the enemies all have a bajillion hit points so we're just wailing on them is no fun. Combat should be quick and effective, in my opinion.
I agree, which is why I'm going to remind you of a game that I recommended to you ages ago when I first played it, you need to play Katana Zero. I don't honestly know if you will love it. You may hate it, but it has strong opinions, and I think that makes for a better art object in general.
I have this on my wish list.
Yeah, it probably from when I recommended it to you like a couple years ago.
No, because I feel like that it was money, and I was like, I've got a whole bunch of free games I need to play.
Totally understandable. Yeah. It is relevant to the conversation we're having is all enemies die in one hit and you die in one hit. And the conceit of the game is that you have been injected with a drug that lets you like see the future. So every time you die, it's that you didn't do that, right? And so like you die and then like the little death screen says something like, no, that won't work. Right. And then it's like you're thinking through like how you're going to get through the room that you're trying to get through.
You're doing the mind palace.
Yeah. And then the whole game only has like 4 or 5 bosses because they take many more hits and that's way harder. But the most of the game is like getting from room to room. And if you die, you restart just that room over. But it's a really cool game. It's very stylish. You have a lot of like interesting ways, like every room has multiple solutions to get through it. It's fun as hell, but it is a particular kind of like challenge based game that not everybody is like, I want to learn this skill. But I do think if you can get it either cheaply, I mean, I would say it's worth paying full price for, but like if you can get it cheaply enough or for free, it's worth just seeing how you feel about a game where like everybody's got 1 hit point, everybody has 0 armor class, and everybody has, does 1 damage. So like it's just we're all on the same page here.
2 things. One, I'm gonna drone on slightly about D&D for another second, but before I do, it's not on the PS5. That's the problem. That was the problem.
Oh, it's PC only.
It's PC only. Yeah.
Oh,
and so
okay,
yeah,
so the next time you come to visit me, I will say like spend an hour playing this game.
Bang on. There is the resolve to that. And actually, one of the things that I am gearing up to do, so if anybody who's in my D&D groups listens to this, don't listen to this episode for a little bit.
Skip
spoilers for what's about to happen in your campaign. But because they're 16th level, so like super high level, right? And I was like, I want to make the last encounter be like scary, and it's kind of hard to make things scary when you've got a bajillion hit points, short rests, and all these resources. And I was like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna put them in a mindscape, and everybody's armor class is just going to be equal to 10 plus their dexterity modifier plus their wisdom modifier, right? And everybody's hit points is 10 plus their intelligence modifier, and that's it. And just bad guys deal way less damage, like they either deal 1d4 or 2d4 damage. But when they drop to 0 hit points, they don't go into whatever. They don't, go into death saves or anything like that. They just roll on the sanity table,
nice.
Because that's their sanity being ripped apart. And that they're going to roll once on the because D&D does this pretty well. I just looked this up. There's 3 sanity tables. One of them is like short-term sanity, where it's like 1d10 minutes, and it's like you're paralyzed with fear, or like you run in fear or something like that. And then there's like longer term stuff, which lasts 1d10 hours, and then there's permanent insanity, right, where it gives you like these like crazy quirks. Like one of them is, like I drink to make myself sane. One of them is like I have to constantly seem like I am the most interesting person. Otherwise, I'm sure that people won't like me. Like really intense stuff. So I'm like, because this way the characters will actually come out of it with like, honest to God, like, yeah, no, that took its toll on you, man. Like you're now a little crazy.
You're different now.
Oh, well, hey, you look different. Anyways, do you want to do your mini game review?
I do want to do my mini game review because this is a thing we want to try out. We heard from people, they were like, hey, game reviews. So in place of, for me, at least while we're experimenting with this, I'm going to try out doing like a mini review on a game I played, and you and I are going to talk about it. You may have actually played this game when we were living together, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. But so recently I was like, I want to play Katamari Damacy, and then I'm going to fast forward through the beginning of this experience to get through like the broader concept, which is the original Katamari Damacy and We Love Katamari on PS2. If you are going to go play a game based on any of the things I'm about to say, either play the PS2 originals or play the re-release of We Love Katamari only, not the re-release of Katamari Damacy, because they screwed something up in the engine and it just doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't handle right. So if you want to go play the game, either play the original of the PS2 games or play the re-roll of We Love Katamari specifically. And they're kind of both the same game anyway, so it doesn't matter that the original got screwed up. If you've never heard of this game, it is kind of 3D Pac-Man, which is funny because it's made by Namco. So like instead of marching around in straight lines and eating dots, you roll a ball around and pick stuff up. And like that's what the Katamari is, right? It's the big ball and you roll it around the world. And the more stuff you pick up, the bigger the Katamari gets. And then the ball gets bigger and then you can pick up bigger stuff, right? So that's the general conceit of the game. But it is wrapped in just the most delightfully crazy wrapping paper. Nothing in this game makes any sense, and yet when you're playing it, it all feels perfectly logical, like a dream. It has fantastic music that the composer said, I want all the music to have like a natural feel to it. So almost every single song has a vocal component, but they didn't write lyrics for every song. So a lot of it's just like vocalized, like na 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 na, right? Like they did that because they wanted that to be a consistent instrument, like the voice to be a consistent instrument throughout. And then like some of it's in English and some of it's in Japanese, because whatever. And it's just weird. It's a weird game. So the story is your father, who is the king of all cosmos, basically gets loaded and destroys the universe. And then
I was gonna say, doesn't he destroy the universe not because like he's mad at you, but because he's drunk?
He's drunk, yeah. So he feels bad about his royal bender, and he tasks you with making Katamaris that he will then throw into the sky to be new stars and planets to replace the ones. Don't think about it too hard. It's a dream to replace all of the things that he destroyed. And then
I feel like we could do a safety goggles on this.
And then in the second game, the conceit is that people have played the first game and love it, and so love him, and he's like a completely vainglorious knob. So people are like, oh, we love you, we want more Katamari. And he's like, oh no, we're not doing that anymore. And they're like, but you're great. And he's like, yeah, I am great. Let's do some more Katamari. So like the game both takes place in the universe where the first game happened, and also in a universe that knows that the first game was a video game. Like it's all very dream logic, right?
Yep.
And this is all bright colors. It's intentionally very low poly. Like the graphics are far more simplistic than what the PS2 could have rendered, and they're kind of weird and fanciful. We Love Katamari specifically improves on some things from Katamari Damacy, where the first one is all about how big does the Katamari need to be and how big are you trying to make it, right? Or how big and what time limit, rather. So it's got to be 2 meters and you have 6 minutes, right? In the second one, they added challenges that have nothing to do with size or time. Like in one of them, you have to roll the head for a snowman, but you don't know when it's the right size. You just have a picture of the body of the snowman and the head of the snowman, and you decide when you think it's right, and then you go and place it on top, right? Another one is you're rolling up a Katamari, but it's on fire, and you have to get it. You have to keep it on fire, so you have to keep rolling things up to use as fuel. Keep in mind, a lot of the things you roll up are alive.
Cool. Yeah.
And then once it is large enough to light this big bonfire, you go and you push it onto the logs, and then it lights the fire. And if it goes out, then you lose that level and you have to try again, right? And
if it goes out, then do the screams stop?
No, the screams kind of never stop. There's actually a lot of screaming, because once your Katamari is in a level large enough to roll up animals or people, that is now the main thing you're rolling up, because the things you can roll up are always relative to your size, right? So when you're small, you're rolling up like art supplies and like things around a child's room. But then once you're large enough to roll up the child, now you need to roll up other children. So there's just constant screaming, but it's like cartoony, like Looney Tunes screaming.
Yeah, that's okay. You're definitely the hero. Go on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely the hero. They're begging for you to make more Katamaris, like the whole game.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely like the I'd love to live in the Marvel universe. It's like as a superhero, right? Like you love the Katamaris when you're not being made into a Katamari.
Yes, exactly. It is, like I said, Dream Logic is the
Friggin'
only
Blade Runner, man. Or not Blade Runner,
Yes.
Running Man.
yeah. Dream Logic is the only way to think about it, because it's super meta and super like up its own butt, but in a way that is like you're totally fine with, because they really nail the execution of being super meta and up its own butt. But I was surprised by two little things. So like, first off, if you haven't figured it out, like I highly recommend the series, but We Love Katamari reroll specifically. Like that is the easiest way for someone to go play this series right now. There's a bunch of other games. They're not all made by the original creator. Some of them are supposed to be bad. So I guess specifically this is a review of We Love Katamari, which is the second one. But there's a surprising thing about the controls. So this game originally came out on the PlayStation, and the guy who designed it worked for Namco, and Namco made Pac-Man and a bunch of other like one button or like one stick games. And so he designed the game with the PlayStation controller in mind. And the significant thing about the PlayStation controller compared to, say, an Xbox controller or a Switch Pro controller, placement of thumbsticks. Because you roll the Katamari with both thumbsticks. You push both of them forward to roll forward. You push both back to roll back. And then you do one up, one down to go to the side, right? So it's like you're using your hands. You can see the prince in the corner doing his little rolling animation. And doing that on the Xbox or on the Switch where the sticks are off, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's the shoulder buttons all over again. Like the game was designed with the understanding that the thumbsticks were side by side. And can you play it with them offset? Yes. Would most people not even notice? Probably. But they're dumb and wrong. And so you should play this with a PlayStation controller where the thumbsticks are side by side, because like it really, it's Top Golf with the stupid, golf controller, right? Like on the arcade machine. Like the game is designed with the physical inputs in mind. So like, yeah, you could live without it, but just do it right. Do it right.
Just don't. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I am glad that it garnered a recommendation. I know that pretty much everybody that I've spoken to that has played the game has said that it is like deeply enjoyable and deeply amazing. So it sounds like one that people need to check out.
Should they roll it up? Should they? I don't know. I don't have a good. What's a rolling pun?
The curtain falls.
They should transform and roll out.
The music plays. The credits roll. Then it all fades to black. And you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you've lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play. Not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is saved, but who cares? People know
like, no, wait, that's another thing. Oh shit.